Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
I heard my name. Somebody say my name? Yeah. Hi. How you doing? It's April 11, 2020. What? Oop. God, I hate not. I really forget the date. Next time I go in for a checkup, and they ask me to, when you get old like me, they give you these all right, these memory tests. I'm gonna say an address. Later on, I'm gonna ask you what that address was. Stuff like that. And man, all that means is that the entire rest of the time I'm repeating that address over and over, sort of vaguely answering any other questions they tell me. Because I have always had a horrific memory. And cannot remember names. I can't remember what I was just about to say. But when you get to be as old as I am, the assumption then becomes, oh, she's losing it. I lost it long ago. I'm serious. And I've been essentially able to function just fine. Anyway, hi, how you doing? God. Do you believe this absolutely is the capper on how Trump is a fool, a savvy fool. He endorsed Oz in our senatorial primary, and that's not the right guy. I love it. Inasmuch as whatever faithful he has left thinks he's, the voice of God on high, will then dutifully vote for Oz. That's great. That's good, because he is not the candidate that is going to create the best shot for Republicans to hold on to the Republican seat being vacated by. And don't let the door hit you in the, you know what, to me. What a jerk. Anyway, yeah, it's McCormick, without a doubt. It's McCormick. So I took a great deal of pleasure in finding that Trump, after giving it, I'm sure, very serious thought, decided to tap Dr. Oz as the best choice for Republicans here in Pennsylvania. And I delighted in that. And then I delighted in the fact that it meant that McCormick was pissed off. He made so many entreaties. He was just down at Mar-a-Lago the other day kissing Trump's feet. His wife was a major operative in Trump's White House. Ah! Oh, man. Anyway, so I'm happy about that. But the story I mostly want to talk, I am freaked out. I first saw it on Twitter this weekend, and this story is just one of what I think we're going to be seeing more and more in this country. Whatever the United States version of Sharia law is, we're heading into it. And Texas, of course, leading the way, controlling women's bodies. You know what freaks me out? You think of all these right-wingers always talking about freedom. And these are the guys that see nothing wrong in government taking control of women's bodies. I guess when they squawk about freedom, they're not thinking of women. Do they get freedom? All these guys who think their freedom is being violated when asked to wear a mask have no problem with the government regulating women's bodies in extraordinarily invasive ways. So when I heard that a young woman in Texas had been arrested and charged with murder and jailed, I believe, on a $500,000 bond. Am I getting this right? I swear, this is what I read. I mean, that $500,000 bond for murder. 26-year-old. Her name is Lizel Herrera. Well, the crime was self-induced abortion. Attempting to control her body. Now, everything I've read about this leaves me with a million questions, and I'm not clear exactly what she did and exactly why she ended up going to a hospital. But when abortion is criminalized, women do end up in hospitals after botched efforts to terminate an abortion, either by somebody else acting upon them or they themselves in attempting to self-induce an abortion. All I know is she shows up at a hospital. And amazingly, the hospital reports her to the cops. This is Texas. Now, I was gladdened somewhat to see yesterday that the district attorney in the county in which this all happened dismissed the charge. And he said she had been charged with intentionally and knowingly causing the death of an individual. Then the district attorney, because there's quite a hullabaloo about this, obviously, says, no, this is not a criminal matter. And in reviewing Texas law, it is clear that she should not be prosecuted. Somebody had posted that huge bail. She was out, I believe. And that's another question I have. What? $500,000 bail? And what we still don't know is did all of this happen because somebody misunderstood the noxious Texas law about anybody being able to report and bring charges, civil suits against somebody who is involved in an abortion, including a unwitting person who drives somebody to one? The weird thing about that Texas law, which I now find out, the one that bans abortion after 6 weeks, the one that deputizes anybody, anywhere, right? That law, as the DA said, does not apply in this case. You know why? Because you can't charge the woman. I didn't know that. You can charge everybody around the woman, but you can't go after her. And here's something somebody else, I don't even understand this. If prosecutors charge her with murder under Texas laws, it's likely, said a law professor, they either forgot about the exemption for murder or they have some other thing. What do you mean exactly? I don't understand any of this. But what you are seeing here is a little heads up about what life in America, much of America, half of America, is about to become for women and girls. Now, I had a million questions, and I still do. And I'm sure eventually they will be answered. But I found that many of the comments on the Twitter articles by people who, well, again, these are people I don't know, so who knows if they know what they're talking about. But some of these, I think, are very informative. The one question I have is that, wait a minute, what about HIPAA? You mean you go to a hospital and someone at the hospital calls the cops and says this person tried to induce an abortion? What happened to HIPAA? That was one question I had. And it gets answered by a person. Again, I don't know if they're right, but they sure sound like they know. For the folks screaming it's a HIPAA violation, hospitals release this kind of information to authorities on a regular basis. Depending on the state, it's often required by law for certain things. My guess here is that an overzealous flunky misinterpreted the law and disclosed this to the police because they thought it fit the criteria. I'm doubting that there will even be a fine. Everybody's saying, sue the hospital, sue the hospital. And then this person says, and now for those screaming about lawsuits, that probably isn't going to happen either. Entities occasionally get fined for disclosure because that's how the system works. Lawsuits generally aren't allowed to happen unless the disclosure was intentional and malicious. Again, my bet is this was a muddled reading of an intentionally obtuse law designed to cause middle management types to disclose information to authorities under the guise of better be safe than sorry. I hate to tell you all this, but your medical privacy is almost non-existent, despite what you may think. HIPAA works to an extent, but only to an extent, as it is mostly security theater to go to the airport, like so many other things, meant to placate the populace as capitalism mercilessly rolls on. Okay, so I found that interesting. And here's somebody who just had the same kind of reaction I had. Oh, I'm going to, and I'd credit the people, but, you know, they don't have their names on it. But they said this, isn't it interesting that Republican lawmakers have no ideas about how to reduce inflation, lower the price of gas, lower the price of prescription drugs, or protect our environment? They have plenty of time to ban books, attack transgender children, ensure that America's slave-owning past is never mentioned again, make it harder, if not impossible, to vote, and of course, make sure that 11-year-olds who are impregnated by a rapist or through incest can't abort their babies. And I forget one. Make sure that rapists can sue for custody of the children that resulted from their rape, while the woman who was raped can't sue the rapist for child support. When you vote Republican, this is the kind of crap you're voting for. Unbelievable. And then there was this wonderful quote from General Phil Sheridan, who was he's long gone. Phil Sheridan, who was a Union general in our Civil War. And somebody recalled what he said, and he said this: if I owned hell and Texas, I'd live in hell and rent out Texas. Okay. Well, I'm sure a lot more to come on that. But as you know, a lot of Texas women, because of the Texas law, have been running across the border to Oklahoma to secure reproductive health care. And now Oklahoma has one-upped, their wonderful Republican legislature has one-upped Texas, which is not easy to do, and essentially totally criminalized. They don't even do abortion is legal within 6 weeks when you don't even know you're pregnant. Abortion is illegal. So all of those places that Texas women have been running to are about to be closed down. And let's be clear. Women of means will always, as they always did, have access to safe abortion. It's poor women, or even people right on the edge, lower middle class women who can't take time off from a job or have no child care or can't scrape together the money required to make a long trip across many state lines. That's the health care they want. Make no mistake, we're talking about health care. Just unbelievable. You know, for an old woman like me, who as a girl and into my young adulthood lived in a country where abortion was illegal, and where I certainly knew more than one, I'm thinking two particularly, two friends of mine when I was a freshman student at Northwestern University in the 60s, who both got pregnant and who both found ways to terminate their pregnancies, and how both of those situations were so fraught with fear. The fear of potential death. And we're going back there. It's amazing. This is what happens. Our side is always sitting on its laurels. Well, we did that. Well, we elected a black guy president. I guess everything's fine now. well, we got access to abortion. Okay, let's party and then move on. The other side, they just keep coming. Robin Braddock, once my thoughts, the awful death of Steeler quarterback Dwayne Haskins. Bob, I don't have it. What can I say? It's the death of any 24-year-old with so much life ahead of them in this tragic and incomprehensible way is a gut punch. I had never thought much about him. I was aware of his existence. I was aware that he had an unhappy tenure at the Washington, what's their team name now? Commanders, the Washington Commanders. And that the Steelers gave him a shot. He was going to be trying to hang on to that spot. I saw a video of him the day before he died, literally less than 24 hours before he died. And he was goofing around and he was happy and he was smugging for the camera. And it's just, I found that I didn't want to read about it anymore. You know, it's just so unhappy. I wasn't even going to talk. It just makes me so extraordinarily unhappy. Heart goes out to him, his family, and all who loved him. And I feel great pain, and I didn't even know him. Horrible. But I feel that every time I read about a young black man. God knows I read about it a lot. Okay. I had noted last week that Arizona, was it Arizona? It was a specific city in Arizona, had a program in which instead of dispatching cops to certain calls, especially ones clearly having to do with psychological issues or anything having to do with something that might be better handled by somebody without a gun, but with skills in talking. So they dispatch social workers instead of police. And the early numbers on the program are just mind-blowing. I mean, never did they call police for backup. No deaths resulted. Everything was handled peacefully. And what had been a pilot project is now going to be funded more and more and more, because this is smart policing. This works. And I was gladdened to see in today's Post-Gazette that Pittsburgh appears to be getting ready to expand a very small program like it that we have going, that started under Bill Peduto's administration. And it had to do when you're dealing with like addiction issues, homelessness, mental health crises. Don't send cops, which is what we do. They're not trained in that. And so apparently the city has instituted some neighborhood-based teams that instead of calling cops, they go to Allegheny Health, AGH, who's been partnering with them. And this is only, as I said, working in a few police zones, but it's working well here too. And there was a meeting the other day where the police chief, Schubert, said about the police, you know, we've been asked to do things we haven't been trained to do. We'll do our best. We don't have the training. And these are the issues in which people end up dead. So it looks like this is good, that we're going to start doing more of this and save lives in the process. This is the kind of reformation of police departments that anybody get behind. This would be bipartisan. And Schubert said, I will be the first to admit there are people in our profession who should not be in our profession. We realize the harm we have done, and we have to be willing to change. I love being a police officer. It's a noble calling, and I'm human. So I'm just happy to have David writes, I've said it 100 times, blame every pro-choice woman who couldn't bring themselves to vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016. With one Supreme Court seat wide open and more expected, turned out to be two more, any woman who voted for anyone other than Clinton voted against their own interests. Yes, men did it too, but it was a uniquely woman's right on the line, and too many of them didn't care. Because, you know, Hillary, oh, for Hillary. My daughter was one of them. And she made the same mistake in 2020. Unwilling to vote for Biden. Threw her vote away, writing in Sanders. While I invariably vote for the liberal and thus pro-choice candidate, it's no longer my fight. It's not on my radar anymore. Well, Dave, of course it is. It can't just be said to be a woman's fight because men, those women, men are party to women's pregnancies. Women bear the entire burden and men get off, literally and figuratively. So men damn well better stay in this fight. If you care about women at all. I was one who was unhappy. I'm changing the subject to see that Elon Musk has bought up a huge share of Twitter, and then it was said was going to be sitting on the board. And God help us, because everybody was saying, "Oh my God, he's going to let Trump back on because he doesn't believe in, you know, any impediments." I guess. And then today, woo! What a Musk must be a piece of work. What a 180. All of a sudden today, we find out that he's not. He turned down the board seat. Because being on the board would have made him really, the fact that he owns a huge share makes him extremely powerful and dangerous. But the fact that he's going to be on the board was really troubling. Apparently, Twitter employees went berserk. So all of a sudden, I don't know what, he said, never mind, I don't need a seat on the board. And I thought, wow, that's weird that he backed away. And in the story I read about his backing away, again, I'm so sick of stories leaving me with just why, where I don't get answers. Anyway, at the very, this is the Washington Post article, at the very last paragraph, I think is the answer. Here it is. Musk's board appointment limited his stake in the company to 14.9%. Now that he will not have a board seat, he is free to continue to invest beyond that figure. Oh, I don't know why that's the last thing. That seems pretty much what might be the reason. Because now there's no limit on how much stock he can buy. And as you know, he can buy as much stock as he wants. So he can buy the whole damn thing. Oh, just I had mentioned earlier that the Post-Gazette's editorial page has become incredibly bearable. Really. They got a new guy in charge of it. Now, they still carry too many right-wingers, but that's the paper's editorial stance is remarkably progressive, which is mind-blowing. And today's top editorial is calls on Connor Lamb to disavow this ad that you are seeing. People in Philly aren't seeing it in certain stations. A lot of stations have taken the ad off because they say it's full of lies and they're not gonna air it. Not so for apparently their state. I was watching PXI, so they're happily running it. But in the ad, it's by a PAC that supports Lamb, which is a way of Lamb saying, I didn't put it there. And what he does in it is more than once say that John Fetterman is a socialist. Well, let me tell you, John Fetterman is no socialist. He's never said he was a socialist. He ain't a socialist. And it's a lie. It's a lie. And the PG is saying to Connor Lamb, you know, hey, you should disavow this. It's your super PAC. You can't hide behind that. This is no way to run an honorable campaign. Lamb's running behind Fetterman. I haven't talked a lot about these incredible races that many of us are going to be voting on very soon in the primary. I mentioned Oz at the beginning, but on the Democratic side, that is, whoa. We have three candidates, but I would argue that the only two who have a shot at winning are John Fetterman and Connor Lamb. In my neighborhood, when I'm walking my dog, just by the yard signs alone, I'd say it's about 50-50. Going to be tight, maybe. I know both men. I have problems with both. And I respect both to a certain degree. And I know either would be a ton better than Pat Toomey. But the thing here is to vote for whoever we think is going to beat the Republican, who I think will be McCormick despite Trump's endorsement. And I think it's Fetterman. Just by virtue of his celebrity. That's not a good, that's unhappily the reason. Unhappily. But that's my calculation, and who knows what yours is. The other is this race with Summer Lee and why am I blanking? Who's the law professor? Davenport? God, why am I blanking? And because I heard an old fart, that's why. Jesus. And Steve Irwin, the white one. And that's a rough one, too. And odds are whoever wins that one will win the general, but, nothing is assured anymore. But I think my vote's going to the guy whose name I can't remember. Again, of the three, he, I think, is most in line with my politics. Summers a little off to the left for me. And Irwin is just establishment. And I'm sick of establishment. And I know him as well. Nice guy. But these are big races. And I mentioned the word PAC. Well, this brings me to something I saw. You want to know where Republicans are? Well, we know where they are. They're one step away from goose stepping. CPAC, which is their conservative, that's where all good conservatives go and foam at the mouth. There always seem to be meeting. Every 2 seconds, there's another big CPAC convention where Republican office holders say unbelievable things. Things right out of, Mein Kampf. Guess what I just saw? CPAC is having another meeting. Why, I'm shocked. But guess where they're going? Guess where this meeting is? This is unbelievable. Their meeting is in Budapest. Budapest, for the geographically challenged, is in Hungary. Hungary, for those who haven't been paying attention, is under the thumb of the autocratic Prime Minister Viktor Orban. A mini Hitler type. A Putin lover. Hungary is in the European Union, and I got news for you. The European Union is looking at him side-eyed because they know that he's sort of a fifth columnist when it comes to the war in Ukraine. He's a Putin lover, just as so many Republicans are. They love autocracy. They do not love democracy. Orban's the one who has decimated journalism in that country. Forget about it. Education. He goes after what they always go after. And we can see it, of course, happening here. Oh, God. So I wanted you to just know that. Remember I was talking about those 9-foot skeletons that had been found around here? I mean, they're really old. They're prehistoric, or, yeah, almost prehistoric, or whatever. Well, during the show, when I was talking about that, Milton had sent me more information on it, and it turns out it was a video, which is why I couldn't. But the video's on YouTube, and it's mind blowing, and suggests what's weird about it is, yeah, there have been these skeletons that have been dug up around here. And, you know, they've ended up being in newspapers. Like there was a 1932 Pittsburgh Press article with photos, which show up in this YouTube piece, about, in one case, 49 skeletons being found. And I mean, these are not normal looking people. They're huge. They're huge top to bottom, and they're huge wide. They got huge chests, huge jawbones. And the other remarkable thing about them is their teeth. Their teeth are extraordinarily beautiful. Looked like they floss 20 times a day. No tartar. They're white, strong, and beautiful. Now, whoever these guys were, they died out. It turns out that these skeletons were sent off to the Smithsonian for further study. And it turns out they disappeared there. I'm not kidding. That most of the comments on this YouTube thing are of how these kinds of finds end up disappearing because somehow they don't fit. Whatever. I don't know. It sounded conspiratorial to me, but these skeletons were found around here. The local Native Americans had oral histories that spoke of these huge people because when their ancestors first came here, they encountered them. And so again, left with more questions. You may have seen this, but I wanted to send it your way for those of you who missed it. This was an op-ed from a doctor, Yanira Cruz, CEO of the National Hispanic Council on Aging. And it was published in the PG on April 4th. And what she's talking about are drug prices, which I'm sure most of us from personal experience know are just stunningly, ridiculously high. And we know what's behind that, even though some still spout the apologist language of, well, you know, it's because research into drugs is so expensive and none would happen if we didn't pay so much money to the drug companies, blah, 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 blah. Americans pay more for meds, far and away more than anybody else on the globe. people who need medications often cannot afford them. They forego them. There is no way they can pay for them. And this op-ed explains that the big reason they're so high is the middlemen in the supply chain. And I did not know about this. So in between the drug maker and your pharmacy is something called a pharmacy benefit manager. These are corporations. These are the guys that act as a middleman. They negotiate for insurers with drug makers over what medications the insurance plans will cover and at what cost, yada, 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 yada. A recent study 3 years ago found that more than half of every dollar you spend on a drug your doctor says you need goes to that middleman. Half of it goes to the middleman. So, get rid of them. What are they adding? That's the question, and she points out, that's the question Pittsburgh's own billionaire Mark Cuban asked. People now know him because he's on Shark Tank. I recall mentioning that Mark Cuban has started an online pharmacy in which he cuts out the middleman. After reading this article, by the way, I'm giving you the name here, Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drugs Company. If you just Google Mark Cuban's drug company, you'll find it. I did that. It is a registered wholesaler. It buys the drugs directly from the manufacturer, and guess what? Sells them directly to us. And he's not taking a big cut like the you-know-who's do. Now, he offers only generic drugs. He takes a 15% markup, okay? I decided to go and look at my own, what drugs I have to take, because I do take a number of drugs for various conditions. And I pay a lot for them, despite the fact that I have, Medicare, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So I started putting in my meds to see if he had them. He had most of them. And what I found was mind-blowing. I haven't had the time to do it yet, but I am about to become a Mark Cuban drug company customer. And I'm going to say to CVS, goodbye. Goodbye. By the way, since I had to go through all these hoops and called their corporate offices to beg them to stop constantly calling me and emailing me and texting me, you want us to refill this? You want us to refill this? You want us to refill this? I begged them to stop, take my number, take my off, and I was assured that they would. Hasn't stopped a thing. Oh, I'm pulling everything out of there. Four of my drugs that I have to take, that Mark Cuban has, the most any cost, the biggest one for a 90-day supply, a 3-month supply, was $6.60. And all told, it was under $30 a month. $30 for 90 days, $10 a month. I have got to tell you, it's unbelievable. You guys, do this. Do this. You have to register online. You have to get your doctor to rewrite your subscriptions, your prescriptions, and get them to this new Mark Cuban's guys. And that's the thing I haven't done yet, but it's doable. And the amount of money that will be saved, huge. And this woman writing the article, the op-ed, tells you. I mean, she says there's drugs like, treatments for leukemia that people are charged almost $10,000 a month for, that on his pharmacy, $47 from $10,000 to $47. It's the supply chain middlemen that are the biggest reason you're paying so much. And they exist and are allowed to exist in between the drug companies and Medicare, in between the drug companies and all your insurers. And she writes this: when an entrepreneur like Mark Cuban sees a situation like this, he sees a business opportunity. There's no reason middlemen should be taking more than 3 times as much as Mark Cuban needs. Be a really nice profit. Okay? Look into this. I mean, if you're somebody like me who takes a lot of meds. I am so excited by this. I'm going to become first of all, I got to do it and then make sure that it works really well, but I don't see why it wouldn't. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. Guys, I have to tell you that I am going not to be here tomorrow. I have told you, but I haven't told you recently. I'm sorry. I can't be here tomorrow or Wednesday. I will be traveling both days to and from Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is impossible to get to. I'm sorry. I will be forced to take numerous aircraft at odd times, which may or may not, take off and connect. But yeah, I leave this afternoon, and I'll be back for Thursday's show. And Thursday's show, I've got a great guest. Her name is Teresa Brown. I interviewed her years ago when her first book came out. She is a nurse, an oncology nurse. She's a hell of a writer. The New York Times used her often to write about American health care from her perspective. And her most recent book is called Healing. And it's about her ending up being the patient. And the fact that it all happens here in Pittsburgh makes it even more compelling as you read it, because this is generally a huge indictment of our healthcare system. And I mean, I could write it. You could write it. Any one of us who have been in any way engaged with the healthcare system in this country. She knows of what she speaks. And she's speaking of the people, same systems that we all go to. And she flat out says, they're money-making machines. That's all they are. They don't give a shit about. Well, we knew that. Why I always thought of Jeffrey Romoff as Darth Vader and UPMC as the evil empire. Even when I went to them for health care. And I'm not saying that of the employees who, because they work for the evil empire, are denied the kind of work environment that they should have so that they can do their jobs. Caring. Caring is not part of UPMC's business model. Toward the end of her book, she talks about how American healthcare was once the best in the world. There's no doubt about that. But it ain't anymore. By a long shot. It is not. She says in many areas it is mediocre at best. And this is from somebody smart as blazes writing from inside the beast. And now that she's had this unfortunate experience, she was an oncology nurse. She got cancer from both sides. This experience from both sides, boy, it informs a much, much angrier take. So that's Thursday. I hope you'll join me for that. And I told you that I'm very excited, not about the travel, but about going. And I'll be able to tell you more about it when I get back to Green Bay, because I'm going to spend quite a bit of time with a woman who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011. Imagine going to Green Bay, Wisconsin to do something like that. She won it for bringing peace to a civil war in her home country of Liberia. Her name is Lema Gabawi. And she now heads a major organization that, God help her, attempts to, yes, do the same in other trouble spots. Is based out of Ghana now, I believe. And man, she was a young woman when she did what she did. So having the opportunity to sit with her, to have lunch with her, have dinner with her, and then to hear her lecture, I'm not going to pass that up. And I also get to see my mom and my sister and my brother, who are all coming in to do so as well. Okay, so that explains my absence tomorrow and Wednesday. And what else I got for you? It's interesting. I was talking to a friend the other day, and I said, you know, one of the most wondrous words in English to me is the word murmuration. Do you know what a murmuration is? I've spoken of them before. You've seen them, although not necessarily the ones that you see on videos. Look up videos of murmuration. M-U-R, and you will lose your mind. Those are those shape-shifting flocks of birds traveling together that go swooping up. They create like this extraordinary beauty in the sky. And the fact is that it's not clear why they occur. We know why geese fly in a V formation, because that V formation provides an aerodynamic advantage on their migrations. But these gigantic masses of swirling birds, what are they? Generally speaking, it is believed that these birds often, like starlings do, they congregate right before sunset, right before they roost for the night. And you often see them at that time, right? Flying through the sky, meeting up with each other. And when you have these huge numbers and they're able to create a murmuration, the sense is that they do that to confuse hawks or falcons or any other bird that wants to grab one of them. So it's not any kind of synchronized movement, but somehow each individual bird adjusts according to whatever's happening on all sides of it. So anyway, there's been a lot of efforts by mathematicians, computer scientists, ornithologists, who knows what, to figure all of this out. But it's one of the most beautiful natural occurrences, really. Yeah, treat yourself. Google video of murmurations. And then that word that I so love. It turns out that it's because if you're under a huge murmuration, it also creates
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.